Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.
CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. It is our post-election edition, but I'm going to urge you to check out our audio podcast feed where we had a special emergency episode where we broke down the BC election campaign in detail, with the panel being there, giving all of their thoughts. Things are moving so quickly that we are going to move on to the post-election discussion in the ever-moving river, rapid-flowing river of BC politics. We are now talking about recounts. We're talking about elections BC, permutations, negotiations, and that's what we're going to focus on with today's show. So let's bring in the pod squad. Allie Blades, Jeff Ferrier, Jillian Oliver. We're all here to talk about the never-ending BC election. Maybe I'm just reminiscing in the old days, but this thing used to be over on election night. And now we are in possibly a 2-week, 3-week, 4-week process of recounts, negotiations. Let's just start where we are right now, Allie. How much uncertainty is there as we head into, and we're recording on October 25th, the Friday, as we head into a weekend of recounts and final counts? And top level, what should people be taking away from where we are in this process right now?
Isn't it funny to think about that the Saskatchewan election, which is their E-Day is on Monday, could know their results faster than us, and we had our E-Day on the 19th. Something to put into perspective. Essentially, where we're at right now is these critical days of the 26th to the 28th, where the final recount happens, and then we can figure out what the final numbers are in the legislature. There have been some fun things throughout the week where there have been candidates who have requested recounts and they were denied by Elections BC. And yeah, I mean, really what we're aiming for an answer on Monday is just what is that final count? Because then we go into phase 2 of our weird political process of which political party then has the most in order to govern.
Oh, it never ends. But there are not just the 2 ridings, Jillian, that are actually recounted. We have Wandafuk and Malahat, where I think it's 23 vote. This is all going to change. 23 vote margin for the NDP, and Surrey City Centre, a 95 vote margin for the NDP. But there's also like 8-9 other ridings where the margin is under 500 votes, all over the place. How much do we think it might change, given all of the different things that are going to be happening this weekend?
It's really hard to tell. I mean, there's been lots of attempts to read the tea leaves, trying to figure out what those mail-in ballots, what those mail-in ballots might look like if they favor one party or the other. There's evidence that in the past they've tended to favor the NDP, like in the Courtney Comox recount that happened in 2017. But there's also evidence that they favor other parties like the BC Liberals, who flipped with Fancy to Sky after the initial count in 2020. So we don't really know. We could see nothing change. If that holds, then that means it's probably an NDP minority. We could see 1 flip, we could see 2 flip, we could see some flip to NDP and some flip to Conservative. There's really no way to know for certain. And so the parties are all preparing for multiple scenarios. There's like 5 or 6 different ways this could go, not just 1 or 2. So it is stressful for them and also for voters. And it sure would be nice if we had been able to do this recount sooner. Not sure if that would have been possible, but it seems like we didn't need this kind of purgatory time.
Jeff, Elections BC, how do we think they have done? Because we're sort of in a scenario now where we're talking about numbers on spreadsheets, and people are going to spend their weekend refreshing websites, looking for different number changes and different things. How do you and plus we have the issue of what was supposed to be, I think, 40 some odd thousand mail-in and absentee ballots that were going to be counted in the final count across 93 ridings jump up to 65,000. And I don't know if we've heard a really good explanation from Elections BC on that. How do you think the agency is doing in our time of heightened voter worry about electoral integrity?
I know this is a BC politics trope, but it's a dumpster fire over at Elections BC is my take. I'm wearing this military sweater today because despite Elections BC promising this would be the quickest election results BC would ever see, we're still in the election, still happening. It was supposed to be over Saturday, and we're taping this on Friday, and it's still election day. How did this happen? I don't know. They thought, they brought us the tabulators. Thank God for the tabulators and get us all the results. But then they decided, okay, well, after we're done that tabulating, we're going to just not count anything else for a week. And then we're going to start counting these mail-in ballots. Initially, there were 49,000. Now there's miraculously 65,000 with no explanation of where these additional ballots came from. Way to inspire confidence in the vote. They're going to do it over the weekend. They're going to do it like Saturday and Sunday, and they're not going to announce the results at an announcement. They're going to leave it to the tier. They're going to announce it on a spreadsheet, an online spreadsheet. My view is that who forms government is far too consequential to be left to the tyranny of an online spreadsheet. This is sheer ineptitude. They got a chief electoral officer who's making $400,000 a year. And we're getting what we're supposed to be getting is neat antiseptic reporting. We're getting delayed counting, and they continue to do nothing to foster voter engagement. Rob, you've written about this, contrasting it with the United Kingdom, where election results unfold in town halls with all candidates assembled in plain sight, a living theater of democracy, promotes engagement, promotes involvement in democracy. Here we get candidates who, as you've written, hide in private bubbles, while voters hit refresh on lifeless spreadsheets. Efficient, supposedly, but soulless, devoid of meaning. These elections should stir civic life, not reduce it to a data dump. And that's where we're at today. Way to go, Elections BC.
It is a mistaken sort of transparency, the data dump. Like someone's making an argument that because there's a giant spreadsheet, you're getting more information. But you're really overwhelmed with 93 ridings of random numbers refreshed multiple times a day. Unless you're running your own, Excel formula, you have no idea what's going on, and nobody really tells you when it's done, or if it's done, or if that's complete, or like it's bizarre. Let's assume for a second some scenarios here. My sort of calculations when I was thinking this out, that we need to have at least a couple of ridings change in order. Let me pull my piece of paper out here. I've got many pieces of paper that will calculate the outcomes here, but you're going to need to have several ridings change in order for the here we go. I'll just look at this. If the NDP want a clear majority, free the Greens, right? No negotiations we're going to talk about next. They're going to need to hold the two ridings that are being recounted, which they currently have, and win two more ridings in the final ballot count mail-in. So they'll have to take them from the Conservatives, which would be a big change. For the Conservatives to get a chance to govern, they need to flip the two recount ridings or another two ridings, and they could then technically bring the NDP and Greens down in a confidence vote. But by the time they form government and they put a speaker in, they'd be breaking a tie with the speaker every time. And we've talked before about how that's kind of anarchy. So it's still fluid. There's a couple ridings here in play for both parties, and suddenly we're into quasi-majority territory. Does that, should we be looking for that? Should we be talking about negotiations? Should we be talking about another election? Does any of this seem functional, or how do we sort of frame where we're at, Jillian? What do you think people should take away from that? It kind of feels like we might be heading to another election, but maybe that's just me. Maybe no one wants that, and the parties don't want that, and that's not the thinking.
Anything could happen right now, and I've learned to not try to hang my hopes on anything, because I was the campaign director in 2020 when we thought we had won West Van Sea to Sky, and it was our first, big breakthrough off the island, and we turned out that we didn't actually win that seat. And so we really don't know. Like, it's tough, but it really is just a waiting game. And I think you're right. If any seats flip to the Conservatives, but not enough to give them their own majority, which would be 48, so they have to flip 3. Seems unlikely, but could happen if there's a big bias in the mail-in ballots for them. That then, we won't get another election. But if only 1 or 2 flip to the Conservatives, I think you're probably right. But because of the way our system works, because the NDP is the incumbent government, they get the chance to recall the House. They can elect a speaker. They can force a confidence vote. They can kind of do maneuvers to set themselves up politically and kind of rag the puck for a while. They also don't have to recall the House right away. They can ask for another election. So there's a lot of maneuvering that can take place if we stay in that sort of difficult seat math where the Conservatives just flip 1 or 2. But I think you're right in that scenario. The chances that we're going to another election in the next few months seem higher, but probably it's so hard to think all this through, but I would think that the NDP might want to kind of put a little space between now and when that happens, even if it is inevitable.
Okay, Allie, I think Jillian makes an interesting point there. Like, does the NDP want another election? Does anyone want another election? All the parties just spent millions of dollars. The electorate is fatigued. When we start looking at these negotiations and the idea of people taking brinksmanship and negotiations and who holds the balance of power, does anyone really hold enough balance to send us to another election? Does anyone want that? Would that be a good idea? Is that even on the table, do you think?
I wouldn't even be able to, no one will be able to even predict what's going to happen. What we can analyze is just the behavior of each party this week, and that might give us some clues as to what their preference is moving forward.
Walk us through that then. What did you think of the behavior of Sonia Furstenau, for example? She had a press conference, and what did you think of that?
I have some notes. I'm so glad you asked this question.
Okay.
So Sonia Furstenau has always gained the respect of a lot of people across partisan lines. This week, I don't think that she did that with me in particular. What I saw was a very sanctimonious Sonia Furstenau for the first time probably ever. And the reason I say this is because there was this controversy of potentially not getting on the phone with both leaders and giving both leaders on the NDP and the Conservatives the same time of day. There was this moment where she calls out on John Rustad for not having enough leadership, and essentially saying, to decode that, essentially saying that she wants him to kick out some of his caucus members because of comments that they have made, and something that she cannot demand because it's not her caucus. And then the reason why I think, and this is I have no line of sight as to what Sonia Furstenau's political future holds. The reason I think she's done this is because then next week she can say, well, I can't support John Rustad because he didn't kick out these 2 caucus members. So I'm forced to go to David Eby, even though David Eby's approval ratings aren't that great. It was shown essentially by the vote and the will of the people in BC. And it's a sign that she probably will favor an NDP government, but a portrayal in advance that John Rustad, a relationship with the Greens would just be untenable. But she's forced to work with this party that also might not have a stellar political future in BC either. Mm-hmm.
I was surprised by that press conference as well, because it tipped the hand of the Greens to show that they really have no desire to work with the Conservatives. And it's sort of, I came away thinking, half the province backed the Conservatives, right? By just sort of discounting that, you're sort of not speaking to half of the province. 900,000 people, 43% of the vote, 45 MLAs, and Sonia Furstenau didn't win her seat, but she wants to tell John Rustad to kick MLAs out of the caucus that the voters just elected. Like I'm not sure how democratic that seems to me when I break that down. Jeff, what did you think of that?
I didn't hear Sonia Furstenau say that at all. I think what I heard her say was that to engage in for the Greens to engage in meaningful discussions with the Conservatives, John Rustad needs to show some leadership and how he is going to ensure that his caucus takes responsibility and accountability for idiotic things that they've said in the past that came up in the election, and make a ironclad commitment that saying things like Muslim community are inbreds, or that LGBTQ people are groomers, or that deaths at residential schools never happen, that he's going to take a much stronger approach as a leader to telling his MLAs to stop it, because that divides people, and there's no way that a government can function with folks who are saying and doing such things. And so that seemed to me to be an opportunity for the Conservatives to say that, as much as we're talking about the NDP needing to hear the lesson of what the voters have told them in this election, and they've definitely heard a lot about cost of living and pace, this was an opportunity for John Rustad to reflect back that he's heard the voters and their concerns about this stuff. And if he dealt with that and moved on to governing, here's a chance for him to form a partnership and form a government with them. I'll point out that as much as folks are dumping on David Eby, he got 21,000 more votes than the Conservatives. They won the popular vote handily. And Sonia Furstenau comes to the podium with the support of 167,000 British Columbians. And that's largely because of her and the campaign that she has led. And so, and she's got a role to play in how a minority government will function. If I had to guess, and I'm not supposed to guess, I'm supposed to deal in hypotheticals when you're doing media, I should probably send you a statement instead of talking about this out loud. It seems a lot like a vote-to-vote scenario is the most likely one, at least from the outside looking in, where the NDP, should the result hold, can bring in a speech from the throne and start to govern and try to find votes with the other parties for specific initiatives and that it wants to advance in the legislature. And most of the time it'll be Green, but there may be instances where they try and put some pressure on the Conservatives to support the government on things like economic development and resource development and mental health and addictions and those sorts of things.
I'm just not sure I buy some of that, because
You agree with everything I say. Come on, get with the program, Shaw.
The voters voted for those MLAs to get into office.
I didn't say that they should be kicked out of caucus. I'm suggesting that what Sonia Furstenau said is that the leader, John Rustad, needs to set a stronger tone about people saying those things, and they need to stop it, because it's unhelpful to a province that needs to come together to deal with some really big issues. So it's not about getting rid of MLAs. Voters have had their say. It's about demanding a level of respectful conduct from the members of his caucus. And I think that's wholly within her right to demand that.
Yeah. And she's in a position where her and her MLAs would in that situation be potentially giving Rustad the ability to appoint those people to cabinet posts. So giving them more power than voters chose to give them because they didn't vote for a majority. And I think she, takes that seriously. And I think that there was also a lot of people who voted against the other party just as much as, some people voted for a certain party. And I don't think that just because, some of the MLAs who said a lot of questionable things managed to get, a plurality of votes in their riding means that that's a blank check for that everything that they said was okay. People like Brent Chapman didn't actually answer for what they said they hid in closet. So I still think it would be a mistake to sort of, just say that that's settled, because I think it's a normalization of things that are pretty harmful.
We only have a couple minutes here, so let's just go around, and Jeff has already said this, but what do we think would be the smartest strategic move here for the Greens if they do in fact hold the balance of power, given that the previous 4-year CASA agreement they signed, confidence in supply, didn't last 4 years? Does it make any sense for them to sign another one? Should they be doing something shorter term? Is it work to do vote by vote? Like, does that give a legislature stability? Just briefly, everybody, Allie, what do you think makes the most sense here?
Vote by vote makes the most sense. And in addition to what the Greens should be doing, they should actually just be campaigning, because we have no idea when the next election is going to be. And this might prove that they could go from 2 to more if they focused on that and less of the other stuff that we were just talking about.
Jeff, just briefly, does vote by vote allow a government to function and a legislature to be stable, do you think?
It's the least stable approach, for sure. I think what voters would probably want is some form of agreement between parties that would bring some stability, at least for a couple of years, where government can actually focus on getting stuff done on healthcare affordability, housing, and public safety.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Jillian?
I think the Greens have shown in their recent minority experience that they can work in good faith and provide stability, but that they have good reason to not trust the NDP. I think in that regard, it makes more sense to not give as much power away as they did in 2017 and lay everything on the table all at once and say, here's what we want in exchange for 4 stable years. I think focusing on some really clear initial priorities that are, affordability, healthcare, things that we really heard in the election, and saying, you are going to have to give us these things in order to get our confidence on an ongoing basis, rather than sort of giving a blank check, makes more sense to me.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to leave it there. I know a bit of a shorter show this week, but everything is about to change again in the weekend with the recounts and the votes. So there's not as much fun as it would be to speculate forever. It's better to come back next week with all the latest, all of hopefully final results of the BC election and the calculations that begin to form the next government. Thank you to the panel for being here. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast feed as well. We'll be back next week with all the latest in BC politics here on Political Capital. Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.